Welcome to AusIMM's new webinar series, In Conversation With. I'm Bridget Meaney, Senior Manager, Policy and Media at the AusIMM. Today, I'm in conversation with AusIMM President Dave Clark and AusIMM CEO Stephen Durkin. What is the purpose of this new initiative?
In Conversation With is a great opportunity for us to communicate differently with our members, engage differently with our members. The board has been very keen for us to do things a little differently. We've got a communications plan as well that's quite comprehensive, and this is a really important part of that communications plan with our members.
And why is it important, Steve?
Well, I think it's really important so that our members get to hear what's happening. So In Conversation With is a new format, as Dave said, for AusIMM. It's always very difficult in a professional association to actually share with all of your members all of the things that are happening. You know, some people want to see it on the website, some people want to see it via email, but we also know through our research that lots of members want to actually hear from us, from the President on behalf of the board, from the CEO on behalf of our management team, what's happening when we're on the ground.
So what are the AusIMM doing in the policy and advocacy space?
Well, AusIMM, as the peak body for people working in resources, cares deeply about the work we do in the policy and advocacy space. In fact, we passionately believe it's the most important thing that we need to do on behalf of our members and the professionals that we represent, to be that trusted voice, to be that voice of independent representing the membership, speaking with integrity, making sure that the conversation is informed by data and science, and making sure that we're advocating on behalf of our members and those professionals to make sure that we inform government, to make sure that we inform industry, make sure we inform universities, the media, a range of stakeholders in terms of the important work that our members do, not just in Australia and New Zealand, but all around the world.
And is the board interested in this space? What role does the board have, and the structure of the AusIMM in policy?
So the board's particularly interested in policy-related matters. In addition to that, what gives me great excitement is our members are just so passionate, around the things that are important for the industry, the things that might impact on them professionally, to make sure that we're doing the best possible work in terms of the standard of what we're doing within the resources sector. So it's on the agenda. The board's often speaking about it and thinking ahead in terms of strategically, where are we at and what will be important as we move forward.
And we have a policy and advocacy framework. What sort of things, do we advocate on policy-wise? It's
the issues that are important to our membership. And I think the notion of advocacy is a really, really important distinction to draw out, here today in this communication exercise. We're explaining that an advocacy group like the AusIMM represents a community of professionals, operating under a code of ethics. We bring together that community of professionals to make sure that we speak with a single voice on behalf of a range of areas that are really, really important to our membership and the future of our industry.
So tell us about Canberra this week. What have you been up to?
So there's a lot of excitement within Canberra this week within the resources sector. We know that mining can be very sort of cyclic within the broader resources sector, but there were panel sessions earlier that coined the phrase a mega super sweet spot within resources at the moment, which I think is fantastic, and that highlights the opportunities for professionals and the broader industry at large. So there's a lot of important topics around the future of mining, critical minerals and the role that they've got, the sense of optimism around the market and where that's heading. And I think for us within the AusIMM, making sure that we're engaging with the key stakeholders to understand how we can help them and what we need to do to add value to the sector moving forward.
Who have you been meeting with?
Obviously in Canberra, the main stakeholders are politicians. But it's also a really exciting week when the industry overall comes together. So there's a number of other kindred bodies in Canberra that we're meeting with this week. A lot of industry leaders. Dave and I have met with leaders from BHP and Rio Tinto and Glencore over the past few days. But the main purpose of the week is for us as an industry to come together and tell our story to both sides of politics about the importance of the industry and the future of the industry, and quite frankly get a commitment from both sides of governments in terms of their support for the industry. So today we've been at a lunch with the opposition leader, Anthony Albanese, Tonight we're going to a dinner that Scott Morrison, our Prime Minister, will address. Over the last couple of days, Dave and myself and yourself, Bridget, have met with the Minister for Resources, Minister Pitt, as well as the Opposition Minister for Resources, Madeleine King. So we've met with a range of politicians across both sides of the political fence to talk about the industry, to talk about the AusIMM, but most importantly, to talk about the important work that our members do and our important role as an organisation that's been around for 129 years in terms of representing our members as being the best in the world at what they do.
So what are the key issues that you've been discussing this week in Canberra?
There are some really important themes around ESG. It's been spoken about a lot in recent times, but it's very prominent, that topic here, and particularly on the social side of things. And in terms of the AusIMM, it sort of reinforces our social performance focus and looking at sort of upskilling and development. Although there's a lot of opportunities that have been recognised within the sector, there's some really important challenges and issues that we've needed to deal with in recent times, but there's a great chance for us as a collective to turn that around and do the right things moving forward to make sure that we've got a sustainable sector.
Yeah, there's a real buy-in around what we passionately believe, this kind of notion of social value and how we as a professional body, represent the work of our professionals in terms of creating more value for society. Some of the more specific areas of interest around health and safety, certainly a lot of interest around the work that we're doing as an organisation in terms of professional development and government wanting to work with us to better support that work, because government understands that if we do that effectively, then we'll, as I touched on earlier, will enhance the reputation of the industry and the work of the professionals as being the best in the world at what we do.
The other thing that's really apparent, Steve, is around the education piece, and whether that's around secondary schooling, tertiary education, that ongoing continual sort of professional development as well that we offer. So it's been recognised on both sides that the skill gaps that we're experiencing at the moment and that are potentially going to be compounded is something that we really need to understand and do something about. And so I think there's a really important role for the AusIMM in that regard.
100%.
And we've been speaking to them about some of that work we're doing already in that education space, haven't we?
Yeah, in terms of some of the work we're doing around our future workforce and resource gaps, some of the work that we're doing in terms of setting up a committee to actually quantify that work, to actually be able to measure the gap between supply through the university sector and the demand of industry. A lot of politicians that we've spoken to are really interested in that work, and very much, as I'm sure our members are as well, looking forward to us advancing that work over the next couple of months.
And some are very ambitious, if you like, in terms of when at a ministerial level they might like to get that information to help inform some really important decisions and investments. But our view is we need to go through this process properly and be very rigorous in terms of how we go about that.
Obviously, AusIMM, we've been meeting with these industry representatives. How does AusIMM work with these companies to support the career of professionals that we represent?
There's been a lot of very senior executives from some of Australia's leading mining companies together in Canberra this week. The great news from our point of view is that there's a lot of respect for a lot of the work that AusIMM is doing and a lot of areas that we're looking to show leadership on. And there's a genuine curiosity from many of those executives and many of those companies about that work and wanting to support that work. They want to really lean in on these big conversations with us. Something we passionately believe will be more effective in terms of being the trusted voice if we're telling that story on behalf of our members, but with the backing of some of those big mining companies. And that's really been the essence of the corporate partnership model that we introduced a couple of years ago. That's expanded to be partnerships with a range of organisations, not just companies. But we think that working in partnership with those various groups that would be more effective in terms of telling those stories. Examples would include the work we're doing around the future workforce, where BHP and Rio Tinto are providing some funding in terms of making sure that we really do that work as effectively as I know our members want us to do. We're doing that with a real sense of purpose, with some very, very specific and clear objectives in mind. That objective being to quantify what that gap is between the supply and the demand that we talked about before. The
other really interesting development for me over the last couple of days has been beyond the technical disciplines that we've typically represented, especially around geologists, geotechnical engineers, mining engineers, metallurgists, environmental scientists. It's around, well, how else can the AusIMM assist us beyond the technical excellence sort of areas in some of those disciplines? In what other areas can we assist them with some of their challenges and capitalising on the opportunities at the moment within the sector.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Something that we've shared with a lot of people we've spoken to this week, and that I still find quite fascinating about our industry is that 17% of the people, the employees that work for mining companies in Australia are tertiary qualified professionals. You can compare that to, for instance, the manufacturing sector, where that figures 10%, or the construction industry, where that figures 3.5%. And what we see is the type of professional emerging in the future in terms of being a thought leader, really trying to provide sophisticated solutions to really shape the future of the industry in what's a very, very complex industry. Industry is very much looking to us as the peak body for the people that work in resources to work with them to better understand the kind of skills that we're going to need in terms of those professionals in the future. And we see that professional in the future being very much a very highly skilled generalist, rather than necessarily some of the sort of specialist areas that our members have kind of worked in over the past many decades. So, that's an example of kind of how industries, we're not just working with industry, but industry is also looking to us as a trusted partner and a trusted voice to be able to work with them to really define that future workforce for themselves as major employers in their own right.
And beyond some of those more sophisticated technical excellence development needs, what's also clear is that through the growth in the sector, there are a lot of non-mining people who are being recruited by those mining companies, and they bring some great skills and diverse experience that can add value, but often they're not aware of some of the fundamentals around sort of mining as well. So to complement some of that higher end work that we're doing, providing some of that basic knowledge and understanding about the mining industry to help those people transition into the sector.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. More and more those large mining companies see, given that there is clearly a gap in terms of those traditional professionals coming through, the geologists, the mining engineers, metallurgical engineers, there's a clear gap there. An industry very much looking to us as they bring on people with a more generalist or less specific background to be the professional home for those individuals, so that we can upskill them and teach them or induct them into the industry ourselves as an organisation that more and more is providing professional development and really building out our content strategy in terms of the way that we work with and educate not just our own members, but all professionals that work in the mining industry, to make sure that overall we've got really continue to have as an industry in this country really highly qualified people that work in our industry, so that we can continue to enhance and build out a reputation at a global level.
And that diversification of our membership, that fits in really nicely with our commitment to diversity and inclusion, and we work with industry in that area too on our Council for Diversity and Inclusion. Do you want to speak a little bit more about that?
100%. This is probably another topic for an in conversation with, I'd be guessing, but you're absolutely right, Bridget. For us, the essence of diversity and inclusion is making sure that our industry is more welcoming to people, not just in terms of people that have a different have a different background in terms of where they come from, but also people that work in other industries or have come from other industries. So for us as an industry to not just accept, but to really embrace those people that come from with a very, very different professional background, and do a much better job, quite frankly, as an industry at bringing those people into our industries to make sure that they can add value and contribute in ways that may not have necessarily traditionally been the case.
How do the conversations and activities occurring this week feed back into the AusIMM's policy and advocacy work?
What we've recently established is a trusted voice ambassador role across our branch network. There's 18 trusted voice ambassadors across our 22 branches, and what we're looking to do through those roles is very much amplify the work that we're doing behind the scenes, so that our members locally have greater visibility in terms of that work. We're also very committed to the idea of tapping into some of those key local themes that we don't necessarily pick up at a national level, that are often quite nuanced to those local jurisdictions, whether it's some of the industrial manslaughter issues that we've been working with our branch in Brisbane on, or some of the work that we're doing around lithium and battery minerals, and some of our policy development work there we've been doing with one of our WA branches, where it's a really important topic. So it's also not only to amplify that work that's happening at a national level through our policy and advocacy work, but it's to better support some of those local policy issues and to work in closer partnership with our local branches and our branch committees in particular, to make sure that we're able to better support them in terms of some of those more localised issues that are really, really important from an industry perspective.
And these, conversations and topics of importance and advocacy issues, they feed back into the Policy and Advocacy Committee, don't they, and kind of submissions and government. How does that all work? Do you want to speak a little bit about that, Dave?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of great takeaways for us over the last couple of days to make sense of, and many of those align to some of our own strategic imperatives, some of the key initiatives that are underway anyway, but there's a whole bunch of actions that will come out of this too. But I think it's up to us now to do something with that, and so we're keen to go back, feed that back to our membership base, as Stephen mentioned, through our advocates, but also through to the board and through to the Policy and Advocacy Committee as well, because there are other things that are happening at the moment in that education space where around the curriculum, the sort of questioning resources science and the future of that at the moment for that year 7 to year 10 sort of bracket, but that would be catastrophic in terms of some of the challenges that we're confronted with at the moment. So again, another good policy sort of paper for us to put forward to help make a difference in that area too. So we'll make sure we've got that connection through policy and advocacy and through John Dunlop's leadership in that case, who chairs that committee at the moment, and get that out to our members too.
Yeah, I think it's really important to highlight that the Policy and Advocacy Committee, as Dave said, chaired by John Dunlop, who also sits on our board, is very much the conduit or the central point to make sure that all of this work that we're describing is coordinated. Because what we believe that if it's more coordinated and we're more consistent in terms of deploying some of those policy positions, we'll be more effective and more influential in terms of us being the trusted voice.
And I've been really pleased with the quantity and quality of policy submissions the AusIMM team has put forward. I don't think our members necessarily have that visibility, so that's an opportunity for us to make sure that there's a level of awareness, there's that continued collaboration by our subject matter experts throughout the AusIMM, and that we're drawing on that, and that we continue to be proactive because our members are expecting that. And I think we've got a responsibility in that regard too.
And that's really at the heart of what our In Conversation With series is all about, to try to find different ways to communicate that message to our members. We've posted some of those policy submissions up on our website, but not everyone, of course, necessarily sees it or wants to receive information in that way. So hopefully for us to have a format here today where we're actually speaking to camera, it's a little bit, it's fresh, it's in the moment. We are literally in the middle of Minerals Week, and we're reporting from on the ground in terms of what we're doing, how we're going, and why we see this work as being really, really important in terms of us as an organisation representing our members through to both sides of politics here in Canberra.
Because we've really, there's been a real growth in AusIMM's advocacy over the last few years. There's been a significant investment in the AusIMM's capability, hasn't there?
There has, and I don't think we necessarily appreciate that. There's been some important investment and some great capability that we have in that regard. So we've just got to, there's been a step up in terms of activity. We've got to continue to be really active in that space.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to highlight this is a really critical role of the board. The board's guided our growth strategy. We haven't put more people or more capability into that team because people are busy. We've done that because that's been an explicit strategy. That strategy for us is to, more than anything else, be the trusted voice of the members that we represent, just to make sure that we're speaking with authority, with conviction, and with integrity in terms of what we're talking to on behalf of our members about the industry, the work of the industry, and the work of the professionals in the industry in shaping the future of the sector.
And being outward facing is really important in that regard, Stephen, and I know from a board level, knowledge of and understanding of that external environment, scanning that external environment, what does it mean, what's coming up, what are the implications, what are the opportunities around that. So there's been a bit of a shift in that regard, which is really good.
And how can AusIMM members get more involved in this work?
Yeah, it's another really good point, because we are unashamedly looking to kind of unleash the wisdom of our membership, at large. This is a big part of the thinking behind us late last year establishing some trusted voice ambassador roles. So I'd encourage members in your local area to get in touch with your branch committee and find out who that ambassador is, and to try to plug yourself personally into that person and into the work that they're doing to help support this strategy.
And a lot of our members will communicate directly with the team as they're able to through the website, through their own communities of interest or branches as well. So we just continue to encourage that as well. And that's prompted some really great, healthy discussion and debate in many instances, and we've acted on that as well.
Because we rely on that initiative from our members, don't we? With the Southwest branch and the lithium paper.
100%.
Yeah, we spoke about earlier.
The industrial manslaughter example I gave before. Adam Foote, chair of our branch based out of Brisbane, was really vocal and worked really, really effectively with our team to educate our own team about kind of some of those issues that they felt really, really passionately about at a local level. And our team, was very responsive in terms of working with Adam and the branch committee to make sure we put forward a really, really high quality submission that really made the point that they care deeply about in that market.
And there are an increasing number of examples where we have been able to tap into and harness the great knowledge and sort of experience within our membership base as well. So that's only increasing now, I think, with the way in which we're able to communicate with our members too in every direction.
You spoke a little bit earlier about some of the submissions we've made to government. Can members contribute to those?
They certainly can, and in most of those instances, to my knowledge at least, members have been involved in that process in terms of the way in which they're drafted up, the content within those, the way in which we test, sort of review and make sure that the quality is there. So that would be our preference, that members are involved.
Yeah, a good example of that was the work that we were very involved with quite recently around really building the case for a nuclear energy industry and a more pronounced industry in Australia. Over the coming years, we made 2 submissions to federal inquiries. That was supported every step of the way through by Dr. Ian Hall-Lacey, who would be considered not just one of Australia's preeminent experts in this space and a very long-standing and proud member of the AusIMM, but someone who's regarded very much as an international expert in this area. So he was a really critical partner for us to, again, speak with authority and reliability in terms of those federal government submissions.
Because you actually appeared at the inquiry with Ian.
I did, and I was very grateful that Dr. Ian Hall-Lacey was by my side because, I would know 100th of what he knows. And that's part of the power of this model. I'm speaking on behalf of the organisation, on behalf of our members. I'm talking to politicians and formally providing those submissions. But then alongside that, having that industry expert was invaluable in terms of the credibility of the views that we were putting forward.
You're in Canberra, you're on the ground. You need to communicate that, don't you, and everything that's going on.
And it's a great opportunity for us to do that whilst we're in the moment, whilst it's fresh in our minds and top of mind as well. And I just hope that the members find this beneficial, if you like, and of value as well. Not completely comfortable, to be honest, Stephen, but I think it's a different way in which we can communicate. So hopefully on different and interesting topics in the future, we can reconnect with our members.
Well, you're both naturals as far as I'm concerned in front of a camera. It's been lovely chatting to you as part of our In Conversations With. As we take this around the country, we talk with our members, we talk with people in the industry, and we communicate to everyone working in the industry, what AusIMM is doing on the ground.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today for our first webinar series In Conversation with Dave Clark, President of AusIMM, and Stephen Durkin, CEO of AusIMM. For more information on our policy and advocacy initiatives, please visit ausimm.com.